Greeting, everyone. By design or by chance, you've tuned into another very special episode of the Two Old Bucks. I'm Old Buck Dale. And with me to tell you all about today's episode is
Old Buck Dave.
Who's with me?
The other
Old Buck Dave.
Yeah. And we're going to introduce our guest today here in a few minutes. Today we have with us Laura Hayes. She's another woman who's helping making a difference in the lives of literally millions of people this time, as you're going to find out. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Laura first. She is the manager of the Chef Corps at the World Central Kitchen. The Chef Corps is the global network of culinary leaders who champion World Central Kitchen's mission by supporting its relief work. Thanks to their generosity, adaptability, and visibility, Chef Corps members are uniquely positioned to amplify and maximize what World Central Kitchen can accomplish when it arrives first to the front lines and beyond. Previously, Laura served as the food editor and Young and Hungry columnist at the Washington City paper from 2016 to 2022. She covered the innards of the restaurant industry and how food intersects with labor, politics, race, immigration, and the environment. Her cover story about diners with disability and accessibility in the restaurant industry is published in the Best American Food Writing of 2020. And she won an award from the Association of Food Journalists in the category Best Story on Food Policy or Food Issues. In 2022, she received a first place award from the Society of Features Journalism for her story on the deadly hazards of that line cooks faced during the pandemic, and second place recognition for her food writing portfolio. The same year, she won 2 Dateline Awards from the Society of Professional Journalists. Before joining the City paper, she worked, we're going to talk about some of the freelance work she did at the Washington Post, the Washington Post Express, Arlington Magazine, Bethesda Magazine, and a lot more. And she was also the lead DC writer for Thrillist for 2.5 years and served as editor of Dining Biz Now. You heard her on CNN, Sirius XM, various radio shows, NBC, Fox, and more. She's also been a featured speaker at South by Southwest and is a frequent panelist and moderator in DC events. The Philadelphia native studied broadcast journalism at the Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University before pursuing a career in television news writing and production. She also spent 2 years teaching English in rural Japan and worked as a senior communications manager for the U.S.-Japan Council for 3 years. She speaks Spanish and Japanese. Welcome, Laura Hayes.
Thank you. David, I think you're forgetting one important thing. We know each other.
We know each other. Yeah, we do know each other. We might even be. I think we're related, actually. But you're
very good.
You're the famous relative. I'm just the old relative. So.
Not at all. Thank you to both Bucks for having me on today. I'm so excited to be here. That was quite the introduction. So really excited to have this conversation and be a part of this special podcast that you guys put on.
Great.
I just got back in my chair. I was a whirlwind lifestyle already.
I was going to say, you've accomplished a lot in a really short time.
I was going to say, for being 67 years old, you've accomplished a lot.
I'm they call them geriatric millennials. Who have many careers tightly packed into each other.
Well, listen,
ladies and gentlemen, she's half that. Believe that.
Less than half that. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, before we talk about Chef Andre and the World Central Kitchen, let's learn more about you. First of all, when did you decide that you wanted a career in journalism and communications?
Great question. Honestly, as early as high school, we had, and this was a pretty big deal in the years like 2000, 2001, 2002, where we had a TV studio in our high school where we did like the morning news that served as the announcements, and we worked on sports productions that I was really into, and I just loved being the person with the knowledge and dispersing that knowledge to all my classmates. It's never so great on camera. I think one time I was at a TV job, and I had to fill in for someone, and I used a feminine pronoun for OJ Simpson. And and I think my co-anchor said, "That's okay. It's not the worst thing he's been called."
I like it. I like it.
So I'm not so great on camera, but I've just always been interested in writing and kind of producing the news. And so that's why I headed to Syracuse to their journalism school, which was a really great hands-on experience.
Okay, so you got the bug early, and you followed your dream, as it were. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and it's a tough field. So it's it's not only competitive, but it's, I'm sure you've seen headlines over the last 5 years, particularly, of just so many layoffs and papers closing, and local news is in real distress. So it's been tough to watch this field that I love kind of falter in some ways, but also grow in new, exciting ways as well.
Yeah. There's a little known fact is when I was in high school, I was torn between a career in engineering or journalism. And I opted for engineering because I figured that would be a lot less stressful than journalism and communication. So
well done. Well done indeed.
I got lucky. So what about those 2 years in Japan? Like, you were partying in Tokyo every night. Tell us more about those 2 years in Japan.
Hardly. Oh gosh. I was in a small farming village on the island of Kyushu. It was a really nice setup. I had a fairly modern apartment, one of those Japanese apartments where you can kind of cook on your stove, sit on the toilet, and like watch TV at the same time.
At the same time.
Real compact. And I had a little bicycle and a little car, and I rotated between three Japanese junior high schools. Most public elementary, middle, and high schools in Japan have to have a foreign English teacher who kind of teaches side by side with someone who speaks fluent Japanese for kind of the best effect. So there's lots of jobs. And if any young bucks are listening and are just kind of at a place in their career where they want to try something new, I highly recommend the experience. A lot of people do the JET program. I kind of went a little bit of a different route because I wanted some control over where I would land. But it was the experience of a lifetime. Certainly spent a lot of time traveling all over the whole country. My husband and I fell in love with sumo wrestling. Typically in non-pandemic times, we return every year to go to the January sumo tournament and catch up with old friends.
All right.
Yeah. So the Japan bug it's deep within me. And it was just such both a food culture and just general culture and people and way of life that I really just fell in love with.
So you were also, you had one of your jobs here was the U.S. Japan consul.
Nailed it. Yep.
Tell us some more about that.
Yeah, that was my first big job in DC. I just moved back from Japan. There's this new nonprofit that was really getting off the ground called the U.S. Japan Council. This was around maybe 2009. It was founded by Irene Hirano Inoue, who is the late wife of the late Senator Inoue from Hawaii. And I think I was employee number 4. In the past 10 plus years, they've grown into a really big organization in terms of size and scope, but also impact. And we kind of worked on improving U.S.-Japan relations in the business sector and the government sector. After the March 11th, 2011 tsunami and earthquake, we kind of evolved to do more cultural exchange and education and things like that. But it was a great experience and really parlays well into what I'm doing now. The U.S. Japan Council functions in large part by having this robust membership of Japanese American leaders in all different kinds of fields to kind of help build that bridge between our two countries. And what I'm doing now is community building as well. So that was good practice.
So you got to meet the late senator.
I did. He was at our wedding with Secret Service. This was a late April wedding that felt like an early March wedding. So I was so concerned with his warmth and comfort when I was walking down the aisle. But it seems like he and Irene had a great time, and it's hard to believe that they're both gone
They're
now.
both gone,
I
yeah.
miss them terribly. Irene was just such a leader that I will look up to for the rest of my life and career.
It's good to have mentors like that along the way, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So listen, you wrote, I did some Googling on you.
Uh-oh.
No surprise there. And I found this article that you wrote. It was about being apart from your husband.
Oh, thank you. Yes, good call. Yeah, that was so funny. That was an article I wrote while my partner Tom was deployed. He served in the U.S. Navy, and I wrote a bit of a just fun piece for the Washington Post's solo-ish like dating section that kind of talks about relationship issues, and it was a really fun experience. I got to kind of provide this insight into how being apart, there's the old saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder, but absence in our case like actually improved our communication. And so the article kind of gets into that. The funny thing about that article is there were quite a few comments at the bottom that said that people didn't know that Edward Snowden had a wife. It turns out a lot of the readers who read this article thought that Tom has a likeness to Mr. Snowden. So that was not something we had picked up on before. So that is the gift that story keeps on giving, is some good laughs.
Well, that's great. Yeah. Okay. So I did not know Snowden had a wife either. And the picture that I looked at with you and your husband there, you're smiling at each other. Yeah. Yep. There's definitely that going on there. Amazing.
Gosh, that was fun. And that was fun because I got to write outside of my beat. For 10 years, it was all food topics all the time. So it was a good professional challenge to try something a little different.
Okay. And what about your this award you won for your story about diners with disability and accessibility? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm really proud of that piece. It kind of is this idea that, hospitality means so much, and that everyone kind of deserves hospitality when they go out. And I was fortunate to find some sources who were really willing to speak candidly about what it's like for them to try to go out to dinner in our nation's capital, and probably, most major cities across the US. And it's not just about, is the door frame wide enough for the wheelchair to go through? Are there Braille menus available? Can my service dog come? Obviously, those are important, but I think equally important is how all diners are treated by restaurant staff and owners. And there was just some really troubling stories where like a restaurant host would look at someone's spouse, able-bodied spouse, and communicate only with them about the other person's needs, and
the other person's invisible.
Exactly. And I think it was really eye-opening for just the dining public to read this about their fellow diners. And people with disabilities make up a significant portion of the population. They have really important high dollar jobs. They want to go out and celebrate with their friends and family. And we should be doing everything possible to make sure that can happen. Some good things came out of the article. The Washington Post added accessibility information to its food reviews. That was enormous because it signals to restaurants that this is something that's important. Oftentimes when diners with disabilities, particularly mobility disabilities, are trying to find out if they can go to a restaurant, they have to go and do like a Google image search to try to see if there's steps or any obstacles for them to get inside. When it's very easy for a restaurant to post that sort of information on their website. Simply say something like, "Yes, we have 2 steps on our facade, but if you call this number when you arrive, we have a ramp that will roll out, and we look forward to welcoming you to our restaurant." I mean, it's just really kind of simple, easy things to make sure that everybody can have a terrific dining experience.
That's great. So you brought a lot of awareness and showed that it was not really difficult to make it easier. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, are there some buildings where that in an old city where you can't install an elevator? Sure, but the onus then is on that restaurant to do what it can to make sure that person can access their menu. So that might be doing to go when they might normally not offer to go food, things like that. So just always thinking on how to make things easy and accessible and fun.
Mm-hmm. And you also won another award, looking kind of on the other side of the equation, as it were, about deadly hazards that line cooks faced during the pandemic. How was it writing about the other side there, the inside?
The pandemic, 3 of my last years in food journalism were the most harrowing times for the industry, both in terms of restaurant owners and chefs trying to find a way to stay open, and in terms of restaurant staff enduring dangerous conditions, enduring just really bad behavior on the part of diners, people not recognizing, that the restaurants aren't setting the rules, that oftentimes the government is for everybody's own good. And so, while our servers and bartenders and hosts and managers were kind of on the end of kind of verbal abuse from customers, in the back, we had line cooks, prep cooks who are the backbone of the restaurant industry. They are the ones that make the magic happen, and are often the lowest paid. I mean, they were in tight quarters and hot environments where we know COVID likes to spread. DC is a very Salvadoran and other Central American backed restaurant industry. These are just terrific members of our community who a lot of times were shut out of the traditional unemployment benefits that others might receive, that kind of safety net for their immigration status or other reasons. And so they were first forced to work. And if you think about what housing costs, a lot of these guys and gals live 4 or 5 or 6 to an apartment. They all have 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. And so that's a lot of contact with the outside world with such a contagious virus. So just all of that kind of compounded, and the University of San Francisco did a big study on just how deadly their jobs were. And what I would like to see is kind of an acknowledgement of that, and an increase in cook salary and benefits, just now that we know everything that they gave to us to keep us fed during such a precarious time.
Okay. Hey, listen, let's move along here to another topic here. What attracted you to Chef Andre and the World Central Kitchen organization?
Covered Jose Andres and his restaurants as a food journalist. He's a pillar of the local dining community here in DC and elsewhere around the world. But I had done a couple stories about World Central Kitchen, in particular one during the pandemic when we had taken over the ballpark where the Washington Nationals play, and I shadowed one of their chefs who was cooking 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 meals a day out of the stadium for people in Washington who needed meals during the pandemic. And I kind of was just really blown away by the scale of it. And, having spent 10 years covering the minutia of restaurants and food and dining and fine dining, it was really attractive to me to think about cooking for the many instead of cooking for the few, since that's exactly what World Central Kitchen does. And so when the perfect opportunity opened up, I had to explore that. So I joined the team as the chef crew manager in April 22.
Yeah. So what is your role exactly? I'm taking some, I'm making some assumptions here that our listeners know what World Central Kitchen is, and they may or may not have heard of Chef Andres. So tell us a little bit more about the World Central Kitchen and its organization and your role specifically, more specifically. What do you do there that makes a difference?
You got it. So yeah, I'll start big picture. So World Central Kitchen, we are first to the front lines, providing nourishing meals in response to humanitarian, climate, and community crises. We've been around since 2010, when Jose went to Haiti after that devastating earthquake. We've been thinking a lot about that earthquake in the past couple of weeks because we're currently responding to also a very large scale earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and just seeing the rubble and just all those memories are flooding back to those employees who have been with us the whole time. And from there, we kind of found our niche, what kind of makes us special. And that, I would say, is our speed, our adaptability, our strategy of working with the local community, and the quality of the meals that we serve. We really act with the urgency of now to get cooking as quickly as possible after something happens. We don't think that food and meals, can wait. We have to find ways to get food to people as quickly as possible. And there's a number of ways that we carry out our work. Sometimes we'll find a kitchen that's capable of producing thousands of meals a day that we run with a mix of staff and volunteers. Other times we partner with local restaurants, food trucks, and caterers by reimbursing them for the meals they make for their neighbors who need these meals. And we provide them with, guidance and standards to make sure these are real hefty, nourishing meals. It might be the only thing somebody eats one day. And sometimes we do a mix of both. So for a quick example, I was part of the team that responded to Hurricane Ian in Florida, which is a part of the world I know you know something about.
We sure do.
So for that one, we had a relief kitchen that was making 15,000 meals a day. We were set up in Fort Myers, where the Minnesota Twins do their spring training, and living in those dorms. So those meals were all going out to people who were displaced from their homes, or who still didn't have power and electricity to cook at home. All of the restaurants and grocery stores were completely dark, so they needed food for quite some time. And then we also worked with about 55 food trucks to meet that vast need. So it was a major response. We really prioritize serving meals that are not only nourishing, but also that are culturally appropriate, and we serve them with as much dignity as possible, just really showing respect to people and what they're going through. Obviously, if we're serving Afghanis arriving at the airport who just fled their country, we're going to make sure those meals are halal, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the big picture. The goal is always the same: hot, nourishing meals as quickly as possible after these emergencies.
I recall seeing on the news Chef Andres in Ukraine and talking about how many meals there were. Can you give us some numbers on how many meals that get served to disaster areas, or a war zone like the Ukraine, or a disaster area like Turkey and Syria?
So to date, going back to that 2010 kind of founding period, we've served more than 250 million meals. And the lion's share of those, more than 200 million, have been from our Ukraine response. And part of that is that, we're coming up on 1 year of supporting people of Ukraine. We served our first meal to Ukrainians, refugees fleeing their homes at a Poland border crossing on February 24th, 2022. So it's been pretty much exactly a year.
So you've been there from the beginning.
Yes.
As soon as disaster struck there, you guys were there. That's impressive.
Exactly. And we've had to continue to adapt. We ended up operating in 8 countries, and we served more than 1,100 cities and towns within Ukraine. It's just as a constantly changing situation. In the beginning, we were, serving people in bordering countries and towns as people left. And then as the traffic changed and more people were going back into recently liberated areas or just returning home, no matter what, we made sure that we were there for them. A lot of supply chains have come to a complete halt. So a World Central Kitchen meal is a lifeline for so many. We're now led by a great team of Ukrainians, people that are feeding people around the clock. Sometimes we provide meal kits so people can cook at home as they're sheltering in place, and we respond to immediate emergency situations, like residential shellings and power outages and things like that. But yeah, Ukraine is just one. While we are in Ukraine, in 2022, we also managed to respond to emergencies in places as diverse as Brazil and Tonga, Madagascar, India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Spain, Gaza, Guatemala, and then, so many countries, and so many communities in the United States, definitely hurricanes and flooding and fires that we tend to respond to every year in the United States.
Well, I had no idea it was such an ongoing and massive effort. A lot of that we'll never hear about. We'll never hear about some of those things that you're doing. Obviously, we hear about Ukraine and Turkey, but that's incredible.
Yeah, and part of the
gratitude.
way. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it is a team effort. And our staff, but also our volunteers. We have such dedicated volunteers who are just willing to drop everything and go and make sandwiches for us for 6 weeks, soups by the gallon. And then it's the other thing I love about my work is, again, how closely we work with the local community. So we're hiring local cooks, local dishwashers, local translators and fixers and drivers, and just trying to kind of help the economy recover a little bit simultaneously. And we also, of course, pay very close attention to when it's time to leave. We don't want to be offering free food next to small businesses that are finally able to start bouncing back.
You don't want to compete with the local businesses that have come back.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Okay.
after the deadly shooting at the Tops grocery store in Buffalo, that was that community's really only grocery store. So we were there for as long as it took while the store was closed, serving hot meals and also providing grocery bags. But as soon as the grocery store was in a position to reopen, that's when we knew it was time to, scale down our response so that the grocery store could start to bounce back.
I was going to say, I don't think anybody knew that.
No, I sure didn't.
I sure didn't know that.
About Tops? Yeah,
that you went there and you did it very low key. You wasn't looking for any fanfare. You just helped people.
We cook. That's what we do. We actually had, I think there was some Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres that came and helped us out one day. So that was fun. Buffalo's they've just had a rough year. We were back there again for that winter storm that just snowed people in for days, and then they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. So
Hey, Dave, I would say that anybody listening that thinks you can't make a difference, here's a good example of a young person that does make a difference. I think that's fantastic. Sometimes, you get a little depressed about the whole world. You think, boy, oh boy, how tough it is. And then you hear that somebody actually is moving around there on the ground, trying to help with any trumpets blaring or nothing. They're just trying to get the job done and help people. So I really appreciate it, Laura. Thank you so much for doing that. I really do.
Of course. Yeah. And my job is my unique job is a really special one because I go out and find the people who are driven to help. Uncle Dave, is it okay if I tell you a little bit about what I do?
Please do. I was going to ask you that.
It's kind of an experiment, but it's going well. So I recruit and manage our chef corps. So that's our global network of chefs around the world who agree to help us. Their main role is an easy one, and that's to kind of serve as a local liaison if disaster strikes in their city or region. Every emergency is different, obviously, but we might turn to them looking for kitchens to cook out of, places to store materials. Maybe they have connections to a local culinary school or where we could find volunteers. They could help us figure out where the fuel is hiding, provide guidance on what kinds of dishes would be really comforting to locals. Really whatever it takes to speed up our response time to help us get cooking quickly and also, best serve the local community. So they're kind of these local champions that are just, ready to help not only where they're currently based, but America is a really special place that we have people here from all over that still have family in other countries. And so often, for example, I'll be able to turn to my Filipino and Filipino American chefs and say, okay, we're going to the Philippines. Do you have family there? Can we call them and check on them and understand the situation? So really kind of just turning to these people for guidance. And, that stems from the idea that, not only are chefs really good problem solvers, really adaptable people, but they're also just some of the most connected, well-resourced and trusted people in their communities. They're like if they're not the guy, they know a guy who knows a guy. We kind of go from there.
Okay. So you're setting up you're pulling the resources on the ground that are in the area, and you're tapping the brainy resources of people elsewhere that know something about the area, the culture,
exactly,
to kind of make it all fit.
Exactly. And this is fun. They're not all, they all bring something different to the table, these chefs, and they're also not all restaurant owners. They come from all walks of the culinary arena. So one that I think you might like, Dave, is this guy Mark Lutz, who just joined. He's the executive chef of a world bike tour company. They do they do
my kind of guy. Yeah.
They do these like transcontinental tours, and he's the one who has to set up the field kitchen and cook and break it down each night. And he's worked in more than 40 countries. So, he can help advise us to kind of improve our field catering skills and equipment. And he has connections in so many countries. And so we look for these kind of magic chefs that really have kind of a superpower to bring to the table.
Magic chefs.
Yeah.
I like that.
And they help in other ways too. Some of these chefs are in the position to come and volunteer in our relief kitchens when their schedules allow. So that's really great to get them in there and manning one of our enormous paella pans. They tend to come back feeling like really refreshed and recommitted to their professions. A lot of them help us by fundraising. The work that we do is costly. It goes back to the kind of the quality of the meals and how we serve them. And so any effort to help raise money for projects that they are really passionate about is welcome. And they generally just kind of serve as ambassadors for our mission in the community. So I get to research these folks and vet them and bring them on, and then plug them in. Exactly.
Okay.
So it's unique, and I'm using my skills that I've kind of gained over the past decade of talking to chefs and figuring out what makes them tick, and what they can and can't do based on how demanding their profession is, and so it's been really rewarding so far.
So tell me a little bit about, I think we're going to be running out of time here, but that's okay. But so what are the funding sources for World Central Kitchen?
We are and I'm very proud of this, a very people to people funded organization, meaning that most of our donors are individuals, people who maybe do one big one-time gift, or people who give a little bit every month. That's really special because that means that so many people believe in what we're doing. Yes, so mostly individual donors. We, of course, also have corporate and foundation support. That's terrific. We have just many, many donors that we love working with: Nestle, TripAdvisor, Coca-Cola, so many that are helpful. The one area we don't really dive too much into is government funding. So we're largely funded by individuals, corporations, and foundations.
And that probably keeps you more nimble as
Yeah,
well.
so we don't like red tape. We like to cook.
No much.
We-
That's right. Yeah. This is two weeks in a row. We've talked to people who cut through the red tape and make things happen. Make a
Yeah, and no,
difference.
we
That's
you know we
great.
work really closely with local governments, and we have a team for that. And you know, we certainly play by the rules, but we also know that when people are hungry, they're hungry now. You know, not in 3 days from now. And so we try to be nimble and figure out any way possible that we can start to get food into people's hands. Whenever we arrive someplace, we arrive with sandwiches, with easily transportable food. So people see our logo, they see our meals, and they know why we're there, and it helps build trust. And then we can kind of grow our operation from there.
Well, listen, we're gonna have to roll it, end it right here, unfortunately. So I want to say thank you very much, Laura. You've given us a lot of information and a lot of inspiration here in a little bit of time.
Thank you. I'm so
thank you.
flattered to be invited. I love the podcast. Make sure you subscribe, and yeah, can't wait to hear it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. It's Old Buck Dell saying talk to you next time.